Okay, I'm going live.
Okay, should be coming up, but okay.
Okay. Um, Thank you all, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. For some reason, every Zoom I've been on has worked great, and today I can't get the camera up and running. So it'll be nice to get some sort of surprise in the middle of the meeting, but I'm not expecting it. Welcome to all to our November board meeting, which is also our final meeting this year. Mr. Secretary, do we have a quorum?
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve our minutes?
So moved.
Second? Bill, thank you. Good morning and welcome all. Today is November 11th, and as we all know, it's Veterans Day. And before we begin, I wanted to take a moment to thank all of our veterans for their service. I'm not sure we can say this often enough. I really don't think we can. They give or have given their full measure every single day on our behalf. A quick note for here in Sea Pines about wreaths across America. It's celebrated nationally. The organization's goal of covering Arlington National Cemetery was reached in 2014. And the national network of volunteers laid over 700,000 memorial wreaths at 1,000 locations in the United States just that year. Our Six Oaks Cemetery is a part of this network, and the annual wreath laying will be held Saturday, December 18th. The ceremony is open to everyone, and it's at noon on Saturday the 18th. So circle your calendars if you can join us. In addition, you are welcome to sponsor a wreath for $15 or 3 wreaths for $30. Just mail or drop off a check made out to wreaths across America and mail it to, like I said, just mail it or drop it off. Thank you. And now on to some other thoughts before we get started. In September, we included a survey in our newsletter that went out to all of you. And I'm pleased to say that over 500 members started the survey. Not everybody finished, but thank you for engaging. And here are the results. Ranked as the most attractive project for Sea Pines POA next year is a website addition listing all businesses inside the gates, property owner prices, additional discounts included. So it would be a one-stop shop for everything behind the gates. Heritage gardens, all retail shops, restaurants, resort amenities, prices, and special discounts to property owners. Very close to this in interest from the membership was interest in programming for the community center. And as you know, right now, Sea Pines CSA funds the center to keep it open to property owners and staffs it. But the reality is it's dreadfully underutilized. So people agreed that yes, it's time to bring some programs or series to our property owners, and we'll be working on that or looking for volunteers to work on that. License plates and quarterly happy hours did not have anywhere close to the appeal that the other 2 projects did. And I was kind of surprised that the license plate response was so low. I'm wondering if maybe we haven't done a good job in communicating to the membership that we have this good looking license plate and that it's available to anybody for a wallet breaking $15. CSA has generously offered to continue to keep them at Greenwood Drive building and sell them for us. And it's on the homepage of seapinespoa.com, but look for just a little bit more communication on that one. The projects that we talked about are clearly just one of the things that we do to provide value to our membership. And as you will hear from us many times, the flip side of this is advocacy. And we will be looking closely at strengthening Sea Pines POA member voices in our community. We are your voice to CSA, but we're also your voice to the town of Hilton Head and Beaufort County and so forth. And with regard to our immediate community, we are paying the price today, a big price, I think, for falling behind on maintenance and repairs to our neighborhoods. 10 years to get a referendum passed to create a budget is embarrassing. And clearly 88% had had enough when they voted to pass the recent referendum. Now we're in the middle of making much needed repairs, and labor is increasingly more difficult to find, and prices are inflating faster now than we've seen in the last 30 years. Here we are almost a year later, and it still takes 75% vote to pass any referendum. Does that mean that we need 10 more years to get anything else passed? Of course, I'm being ridiculous, but really, I mean, 75%. Our covenants were the very first of their kind. We are the first master plan community. So naturally, we are working with imperfect documents. We're all human. But it is time, past time, to revisit the covenants, and we have a task force addressing that now. Another example is noise. Yes, we had a task force and they worked through the industry research and created a low decibel leaf blower policy that the board approved, and it's currently in committee at CSA. But what about the town of Hilton Head? I mean, we sent a letter to the mayor and our councilman, and I will be in talks with the town to see what we can do to help out. Noise levels greater than 95 decibels at property line are prohibited by the town, and no landscape work is allowed prior to 7 a.m. or 10 p.m. 95 decibels gives one pause. According to WebMD, leaf blowers clock in between 106 to 115 decibels, and hearing damage begins at 85 decibels. So here we are in an environmentally sensitive island that does not address the noise pollution that currently exists. You will see in today's budget that the bulk of the allocation is website and communications, which is how our advocacy and projects will be addressed. So I want to thank you for joining us. And Mr. Treasurer, can you provide us with a financial update, please? Pretty please.
Okay, sorry, I was muted. I'll start. This will be through the third quarter, which would be through August. September. We, as far as on the balance sheet, we've got a little north of $43,000 in our checking account. And if you throw in our Morgan Stanley investments and reserves, total in the bank of $406,819. And total assets of $409 after some investment interest. Our liabilities, primarily we owe CSA. This shows $45,000. That's going to be lowered down to in the $42,000 range. And that will need to be paid by year end, which we will do. So total liabilities and equity at $409,811. On the income statement, and kind of comparing it to the budget as far as a variance. Again, through September, we had income this year of $183,178, of which $174,090 were from member dues. Had some other income from selling license plates. The rest is investment interest, et cetera, from the reserve account that I just mentioned. On the expense side, we are at $110,000 through the third quarter. Total budget that we have is $156,000 by year end. We're either at or below budget in all areas, with the exception of legal fees, bank service charges, and communication services. The legal fees is related to enforcing some covenants on a home where we took action here in Sea Pines, and then also in the defense, primarily a lawsuit involving Jinx. There's a couple others, but a lot of defense money on our behalf. We're working on correcting that going forward. But we're at 32,546, and really only had a budget around 10,000. So it's a heavy year for legal. Bank service charges slightly over going forward, and that's dealing with Dropbox with election charges. Going forward, we will not have that charge. So next year it's really just credit card fees that we would have in bank services. And the communication services is at 11,200 compared to an annual budget of 9,000, and that's because of the referendum mailing that we took part in early in the year, and it threw us over on budget on that. The only other thing that of interest is that the director and officer insurance has really gone up because of a couple of lawsuits involving us and CSA. But our cost is at $24,000 to renew that policy. So hopefully in years coming, that will go back down as we hopefully have some better track record involving legal. But currently this year, we're at $38,654 in excess revenue over expenses. Any questions on the third quarter, Bill?
Hey, Grover, question. Under our budget for our property liability insurance, we had a $20,000 budget. We're sitting at 10,000 actual. But for D&O, we've actually our premium was 24,000. We didn't have anything showing on the budget, at least from what I'm reading. Was that initially included in our umbrella property and liability insurance, and it just went way over?
Yeah, that was originally grouped together, and we've split it out so that you can see where.
Okay, I appreciate it.
D&O is the culprit there.
Thank you.
All right, no questions. I will move on to all, if you'd like, to our 2022 proposed budget that I present. Paul and I met and went through each line and to determine what we have spent in the past and what we thought things would look for going forward. We kept the income quite similar to where we are. So we're proposing that we'd have $174,500 in revenue, of which $174,000 is from dues, and the other revenues is from license plate sales. Accounting support, that's $500. All that is to hire a CPA to file our taxes is the main thing, just doing the prep work. IMC does everything else in regards to that. Administrative support, our fees for IMC is $2,500 a month. And then Robin Wade also does some website maintenance, et cetera. And that's at $400 a month. So $35,000 total for administrative support. Bank service charges, as I mentioned earlier, just be credit card is 3%. So we're budgeting $2,500 for that next year. Communications. So communications has various categories. We have to send out member dues notices to those we don't have email addresses for. We have to spend money on annual meeting, like for the proxy and conducting the annual meeting itself. Elections, pictures, collateral production, voting, etc. It does costs, and then software, Constant Contact, Zoom, and InDesign, etc. So all that's under communication, and we looked as close as we could look at that to determine what future was based on the past and what we expected. and we're at $27,000 there. Insurance, again, D&O at 24,000. So that's 24 of the 30. The rest of it's just business liability. Legal professional, this is, we realize you just kind of throw a dart at a board here, but we're hitting at $35,000. That's our current deductible on a major lawsuit. So we're giving ourselves that much there. Land use monitor this year we won't have going forward. We did throw in $2,000 to have functions or expenses in revolving new member recruitment. We threw in $5,000 for miscellaneous, and then website support, hosting, doing updates. A company called Motiva is $15,000. So the expenses of $152,000, which gives us $22,500 in revenue above it expenses. And if we're accurate there, that will go into reserves. Any questions? All right,
Grover?
we can work to approve this.
Well, we have two questions.
All right.
Anna?
Go ahead,
Grover,
Dan.
you might, for the benefit of the folks watching, maybe you mentioned you would put $22,000 in reserves. You might want to say how much we now have in reserves.
Yeah, that was just now on the balance sheet. Let's see, currently we're at $348,550 in our Morgan Stanley investments, plus $13,700 in the side fund with the Morgan Stanley investment. So you can add those two together. It's just north of $360,000.
Okay.
Yeah, and the goal is to get up to at least 500,000. So we're the reserves were at 600,000, maybe 5-6 years ago, and they've been spent down. They need to be replenished. Lee, did you have a question?
I did. I'm trying to understand. We've spent $34,000 for insurance this year, and we're only budgeting 30 for next year. Where do you see the reduction coming from?
Well, I'm not sure exactly where the excess above 30 came from. Looking forward, our D&O was $24,000 to renew it. So and that was quite an increase. So we're suggesting that would stay the same, and then business and liability would fall into $6,000 range. So going forward, I don't see where any other money would be spent.
Okay, I was just looking at actual versus what we spent this year. I was trying to figure out what was going down that would allow us to reduce that line item. But if you've got the actual numbers for next year at 30, it looked, when you went over the budget variance report, I believe you had property and liability at 10,000 and then 24,000 for D&O. So
Right.
do you expect property and liability to go down from the 10,000?
Yeah, that was the proposed coming out of what CSA had paid in the past, that it was around
Okay,
60.
that's fine.
But I will double check that.
Great, thanks.
Dana?
I think it merits some discussion about why we don't have land use management in next year's budget. At least some explanation for the viewers.
Viewing, hold on, let me hit.
For members.
You were referring to the lack of funding of 30 to 40% of the land use monitor. That is not in the budget this year. We had discussed it at the board workshop, but for the edification of people that are watching today, the genesis of the land use management before even the monitor was that there was a gap in some of the services that property owners were receiving. And land use was being managed by a half of a head count at CSA. So the committee spent, it was also compounded by the fact that there were not a lot of teeth in the covenants. And the Land Use Management Committee, the ASPO Land Use Management Committee, spent, I don't know, probably 3 full years looking at the 2010 rules and regulations, which had been created by ASPO back then, and went through, updated everything, and in the process of putting it through legal review, CSA joined the efforts. It became a joint land use committee. And wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. Before that, in 2019, we realized that there had to be a full-time monitor dedicated to the position. So we offered to fund half of it, and then ARB came in and started funding some. So we were down to about 30%. And really, when you look at the fact that we have all the rules, they've been through legal, the South Carolina Property Owners South Carolina Nonprofit Act has allowed us enforcement mechanisms in the form of fines. And CSA, per our covenants, is accountable for enforcing the land use rules. We felt that we had really provided a genesis, followed it through as far as we could, and it's a CPINE CSA responsibility moving forward.
Thank you,
Are there
Paul.
any other well, and I think it almost goes, again, without saying, another thank you to the committee, to the land use committee, and the hours and hours of work that went into this. I mean, thousands of hours. So this is not what you typically get from a volunteer organization. It's outstanding. And it was chaired by Dana. Lee was on the committee. There were several other people, Peter Vero, as I mentioned at the last board meeting. So thank you all. Any other questions? Do I hear a motion to approve the 2022 budget? Barry? Okay. Do I hear a second? Greg, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, so are you all not raising your hands because you're not voting, or are you not in favor? Okay. Okay, so we have unanimous vote. Thank you. You were scaring me there a little bit.
Paula, quick question. Unless I missed it, did we skip over ratifying the minutes from the last meeting?
No, Greg put those out for approval. Did I vote? Did we vote, Greg? I know we did a first.
I
and a
think we may
second.
have jumped over the vote, Paula. I think
Oh.
we got the motion seconded, but I think we moved on before we voted. So
I tend to do that.
I was getting excited. I'm sorry. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes from September 23rd. Oh my God, I think it's unanimous. Thank you. All right.
Paula, to
Right.
wrap up my financial report, I have a couple of things that, one, I'd like for all those taking part today, if you could check your actual mailing address on our website and just verify that address is correct. For example, if you moved, or so that if things are mailed out, you'll get it. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would like to report that thus far with our dues, and we're early on in the collection of dues, there's been 979 dues payments paid, 463 via credit card, and 516 were mailed in by check. So that completes my report, Paul.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. One other thought on the legal that I failed to mention is there are many times where we will go to lawyers to get opinions, to get better understandings of the covenants and the rights and privileges that Sea Pines POA has. And so it's not just a question of the lawsuits that we are in the middle of there, because again, like I said, the covenants are not perfect. It requires legal attention. So thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Updates. Communications, Greg, website.
Thank you. Just very quickly, we had a very nice meet the candidate session a couple of weeks ago. Candidates presented themselves well. The video of that is up on the site for anybody who would like to review it. I would ask that if you haven't voted yet, please do so. The electronic voting seems to be working. We're a little bit short at this point of having a quorum. I think we're like 50 or 60 people short. So it's important that all members do send in their ballots. And that's about all I have to report.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Lee, anything on membership?
You're on mute, Lee.
The membership committee has not met since our last meeting, so I have nothing new to report.
Okay, thank you. Paul, any update on the Covenant Reform Task Force?
Yeah, we're going to have our a meeting on Thursday, November 18th, 9:30 in the morning. And what we're going to discuss at the time, that one is the 1974 covenants. And thanks to Lee Stevens and his incredible diligence, he was able to get a readable copy of the 1974 covenants, which has been sent to everybody on the task force. We had an earlier meeting in October, and it was kind of a general, broad discussions of a lot of things. Some didn't have involved the covenants, others did, but generally what we determined, of course, as everybody knows, they're very difficult to understand and even read. That the 75% approval on a referendum is way too high, and it was really placed in the covenants for the benefit of the original developer and not really for the property owner. And another thing that obviously everybody's saying is that the character and maybe even the feel of the Sea Pines is changing over the last, and has changed over the last decade. If the numbers are right, there's approximately 2,400 rental properties out of, what is it, 5,800 and something that's allowed to have as dwelling units. So which really means we have a large group of people who don't have the same feel and flavor and maybe even interest in what Sea Pines will look like in another 10, 20 years. And when we're looking at recommendations to reform the covenants, that's probably an important element we should be considering as we go forward. So that's it, Paula.
Thank you very much. Important work, and we appreciate it. Dana, the Joint CSA-ASPO Land Use Management Committee.
Okay, thank you, Paula. In the meeting packet, you'll see 2 pages of graphs that provide some summary information about land use management violations that Ryan Cash, our land use monitor, addressed from the time, this 6-week approximate time period from the middle of September to the end of October. And the first pie chart you'll see there shows a total of 88 violation types. And you can see that the large majority of that relates to landscaping, unsightly conditions of properties, and some architecturally related violations. There's also some property maintenance issues. The good thing is, if you look at the next category, the next pie chart, that out of that 88, 82 are new and have been resolved or in the process of being resolved. Only 6 are still open and are being escalated to the next level of enforcement. So there's a very high level of compliance and in Sea Pines, which is very encouraging. And also encouraging is that our new fine system and notification system through SmartWebs has proved to be valuable tools that Ryan is able to get many more violations out per month than he was able to before, just physically manage. And Sea Pines, I hope people feel, is starting to look better and better. So kudos to Ryan, especially, and all the hard work he puts in. He puts in a tremendous amount of effort and really cares. So we are, as a committee, very grateful to the work that he does.
Yeah, I will echo the kudos to Ryan. Not only that, but the fact that he survived the rental season where his workload probably quintupled at least, because our population gets so large at that period of time. So
it's also very interesting that, you know, Ryan manually puts into SmartWebs every month the changeover in ownership to properties. So he's very keenly aware of the property turnover, which has been since COVID pretty high. And just even in that month, you're talking about over 40 properties changed hands in that time period. So it's a lot to manage. It's a lot to keep up with. And he's doing a great job.
thank you. Let's see, CSA Short-Term Rental Committee, Dave.
Well, as Paul, said, the complexion of the community has changed dramatically over the last 10, 15 years, and even more so sharply over the last 4, 5, 6 years. For those of you who, I'm assuming all of you are aware, the town is in the process of, they've hired a consultant to look at coming down with some rules for the town on short-term rentals, some regulations, et cetera. That particular consultant was the one that drafted the regulations for Kiowa Island. And there's probably going to be a lot of similarity, you might expect, to the Kiowa Island regulations. And if anybody wants to, you can go and take a look at those. Those limit the percentage of short-term rentals in different tier. They divide the town up, or the community up, into different tier levels. And at what they call the tier 1, there will be the smallest percentage allowed, and on down to where you could have the complete tier could be short-term rentals, which would be probably the condos and things like that. But I don't know what's going to be adopted. I'm just saying it's a good chance to go look at that and to see maybe what the direction is. And I don't know what the town will do. For those of you who are interested in what CSA might do for, I think you pay attention to the next meeting coming up on November 16. There are going to be some discussions on how to try to create some more financial regulations and licensing requirements to try to make this group pay for the costs they're putting on the community with the extra population, the extra cars and vehicles on our roads, and the extra use. And instead of the full-time residents really paying an equal share with that, to try to make these people pay for the extra burden they're putting on the community. And particularly one of the areas is security, because the need for security during those seasons is much greater, and the calls are much larger. I can tell you that from shortly after Labor Day was the first time in about a year, and maybe not quite a half, but about a year and a half, of when my email box on complaints on short-term rentals decreased substantially. So the community is a little bit more back on schedule than what it was pre-pandemic. There's still a fairly high number here, but it's not like it was for that long period of time. But it is an issue that's been dealt with, and I suggest that you'll learn a lot of where the thinking is of the CSA board at this next meeting. And you might attend that online for those of you who are interested. And that's it.
Thank you very
Any
much.
questions? Any questions? Okay,
Very informative. I didn't realize that the town had the POA consultant. That's a giant step. I'm really glad to hear that. Anyway, okay, Architectural Review Board, Lee.
Thanks, Paula. The ARB continues to be active with lots of new construction and renovations going on in the community. One of the things, and you're going to hear a consistent theme here from the last couple of people that spoke, is we've seen a high proliferation of swimming pools, which are tending to go with properties that end up being rental properties. So there have been 46 pools in Sea Pines, new pools approved this year, which is probably the highest number we've ever seen come through ARB in a year, and we still have a couple months to go. And I guess I should point out, when ARB reviews plans for a new home, our purview is architectural. We don't and can't debate the use of the home. So we don't look at a property and say it's going to be a rental property, or it's going to be a full-time owner, or it's going to be a part-time owner. Our total purview is, does the architecture fit into the guidelines of ARB and the community? And if it doesn't, then we ask people to make changes. So I think that's important. And then lastly, I'll mention, because we've also discussed the land use management rules, that one of the key, in my view, one of the key rules that was approved in that closed a loophole where if people did not apply for an ARB permit, ARB had no enforcement after the fact, and now they do. So with the land use management rules, if somebody does a renovation or any work on the exterior of their house without applying for an ARB permit, the land use monitor notices that, directs them back to ARB, where they must apply for a permit, pay the appropriate fee, and that permit may or may not be approved. So it's possible that somebody puts on a small addition or whatever, and they're told to remove it if it doesn't meet ARB guidelines, even after they've paid for a permit and submitted the plans. So I think that's a key loophole that's been closed. And there's quite a few people that have taken that route in the past and are now being directed back to ARB to get approval for work that they've done, if you will, illegally in the past. That's my report.
Okay, thank you. I also wanted to mention there were 2 openings that were going to be on the ARB board coming up beginning in January. And we are going to appoint Chuck McCrae, who has experience from the Land Use Management Committee, to be the, our opening is the CSA/Sea Pines POA alternate. So we mutually agreed upon this, and Chuck will begin in January. The other thing is, one thing I would just like to mention about ARB is, because they are an independent board, sometimes communicate. We're learning how difficult it is to get communications through, because the world isn't all about us and people aren't always dialed in. So, hopefully we can work with ARB in stepping up their communication as well. And I think that CSA has done a terrific job. We're stepping up our game. So, hey, New Year's coming, why not? I put unfinished business on the agenda. Is there any unfinished business from anyone? Thank you. Under new business, the Sea Pines POA hats, etc. I just wanted to put that in there. I got an email, and this is just to sleep on. Someone was looking for Sea Pines identified, I don't know, baseball hats. We've got license plates, but shirts, t-shirts, things like that. And I don't really think that it exists unless you know where it is, and I haven't seen it. There's the resort paraphernalia, which has the golf course names on it. But I don't remember anything that's just strictly sea pines. And so another food for thought is, do we want to make something like that available to members? Let's see, was there anything else I wanted to add? Oh, Dana, 88 Lawton, could you just update us on 88 Lawton, which is another lawsuit that we were financing along with CSA? Thank you.
Right. Well, just to go back in March, we actually won that lawsuit, and the owners were directed to clean up the property as per the requirements. They have failed to do that. And so CSA has worked with the land use monitor to compile a list of very specific violations that still exist, along with the approximate costs for remediation. That information was fed back to the attorney, our attorney, and that is now being put forward to a judge to make a final ruling so that CSA can be free to go on site to the property and make the necessary changes and bill the owner. So that is ongoing. The slowdown on this is simply the backlog with the court system.
Okay, thank you very much. Nothing seems to be moving very quickly right now in the courts. So if there's no further business, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Paula, I think Bill had a question a minute ago. I don't know if he still does.
Bill, I'm sorry.
I had a comment. You were talking about Sea Pines logoed T-shirts and hats. Michael Tucker, who was on this board at one time and also on the CSA board, had contracted and had some T-shirts made with a vendor. If you want to move forward on that, you may want to use him as a reference or a resource, I mean, to find out who the vendor was on that, that put those shirts together.
Thank you very much.
And Paula, I have something to add to that also. I'm involved with a couple of universities and their lacrosse programs. And what they do is they set up a store once a year through a company called Fans Edge. It's a national company that produces NBA and NFL and stuff like that. And they basically, you set up a store with them where people go online and place their order. You pick a shirt, a golf shirt, a t-shirt, hat, whatever you want. And as the process is, you take orders. There's a closing date for orders. Then they make the orders so that you get pricing up front, but nothing's produced until all the orders are in. So it's a fixed time frame, usually 4 weeks or whatever, that you open the store, people can order, and then they provide the fulfillment all for the price that the people pay for their paraphernalia. So that's another option that we could try.
Yeah, that's very cool, because then we don't have to get into the what size do you wear business.
Right, no inventory, nothing.
Yeah, exactly. All righty, thank you very much. Good meeting. We will come back after a little 5-minute break for any questions and answers. So in the meantime, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Paul. Second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, we got that vote. Okay, we'll see you in 5 minutes then. Thank you.
Hey, Mom. Yeah, 5-minute break.
These are not hard to,
Okey doke. Let's see. Kathleen, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Did any other questions come in? I have the one from Richard Miles.
No, ma'am, that's the only one.
Okay, thank you. All righty. Very quickly, we received a question for the board from Richard Miles. The question is, what steps does Sea Pines plan to take to prevent unauthorized parking in nearby residential parking lots for the new Harbor Town restaurant? So he really is talking about Clipper Court, Catch 1 and 2, and Cutter Court. And I'd like to ask Lee Stevens, who is one of the members of the Architectural Review Board, to help us just understand the lay of the land there in Harbor Town and the parking.
And I'm not sure how much I can lend to that other than, as I mentioned earlier, ARB approves architecture and gives a building permit, but that building permit only permits the entity, in this case, the Sea Pines Resort, to go to the town to submit their plans, and the town actually would approve parking requirements for a commercial property. I think the other question that you asked me to address with that is the parking lot in Harbor Town, who owns it, and it is owned by the Sea Pines Resort. So the town has requirements of how many parking spaces have to be available for commercial properties, whether the reconstruction, and Bill, you may know more about this than I do, but the reconstruction of the quarter deck, I don't know whether that would be grandfathered under previous parking that was available, or whether they have to meet more current parking requirements. But to my knowledge, there's not any substantial parking that's being added as part of that project.
From my understanding, in talking with the resort will have to answer this. As you indicated, Lee, the resort owns that parking area just east of the lighthouse. But whatever, I don't care what the meeting or topic is that I've been involved in, whether it's a task force, a committee, a board meeting, parking always comes up. It's an issue throughout the entire island. But specifically as it relates to the new quarter deck, it is going to tax further what's already overtaxed parking capacity. And I believe that CSA has had conversation with the resort, and there are some things that preliminarily have been put on the table, but nothing that I could share with this group as anything that's factual. But I do believe that there's reason for concern. And I also believe that the people that are involved in the decision-making process are working diligently on this at this time.
All right, thank you. I will continue to talk to people to get an answer for Mr. Miles. It's not sounding optimistic here, but we will work on it. Thank you very much. I think we're good for the day. Thank you, board members. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining us.
Thank you, Paula. Thanks.
Bye now.